Good week, and welcome to Fun with History with Professor Banks. And this week, we are on our 6th lesson in Fun with History. And today, our history is going to be about Bye-Bye Cats and Hello Alex. Are you intrigued? Well, I hope you are. Stay tuned as we travel through history once again. You can just... Welcome to Fun with History with your professor, Professor Banks. And today we are still in Greece, but we are not going to be for very much longer. Today our lesson is Bye-Bye Cats and Hello Alex. But before we get into our lesson, let me share the joke of the week with you, the icebreaker joke, and this is about breath and socks. And it's actually... since it's morning time right now, I thought it was a funny joke for people who might deal with morning breath. And that's something a lot of people deal with. So let me share you this joke, okay? So a young couple was deciding to wed. As the big day approached, they grew apprehensive. Each had a problem they had never before shared with anyone, not even each other. The groom-to-be, overcoming his fear, decided to ask his father for advice. "Father," he said, "I am deeply concerned about the success of my marriage." His father replied, "Don't you love this girl?" "Oh yes, very much," he said. "But you see, I have very smelly feet, and I am afraid that my fiancé will be put off by them." "No problem," said Dad. "All you have to do is wash your feet as often as possible and always wear socks, even to bed." Well, to him this seemed like a workable solution. The bride-to-be, overcoming her fear, decided to take her problem up with her mom. "Mom," she said, "when I wake up in the morning, my breath is truly awful." "Honey," her mother consoled, "everyone has bad breath in the morning." "No, you don't understand. My morning breath is so bad, I'm afraid my fiancé will not want to sleep in the same room with me." Her mother said simply, "Try this in the morning. Get straight out of bed, head for the kitchen to make breakfast. While the family is busy eating, move on to the bathroom and brush your teeth. The key is not to say a word until you have brushed your teeth." "I shouldn't say good morning or anything then?" the daughter asked. "Not a word," her mother affirmed. Well, it's certainly worth a try, she thought. The loving couple were finally married. Not forgetting the advice each had received, he with his perpetual socks and she with her morning silence, they managed quite well. That is, until about 6 months later. Shortly before dawn one morning, the husband wakes with a start to find that one of his socks had come off. Fearful of the consequences, he frantically searches the bed. This, of course, wakes his bride, and without thinking, she asks, "What on earth are you doing?" "Oh my," he replies, "you've swallowed my sock." So, they both had problems with odor, and he thought her breath smelled as bad as his sock did. So, anyway, I hope that you get a laugh out of that joke as we start our lesson this morning. So, last week I left you off at about 405 BC, and we were seeing that it was a great Persian force that was being present in the ancient Middle East, where Greece is. And they had tried to invade Greece a couple of times. Greece fought them off. So I left you off there at 405 BC. And now we're going to see the Persian Empire go downhill now because of its defeat at Greece. So, because it sounds like a cat, purr, purr, purr. Anyway, that is what I got the cats from. So we're going to see the Persian Empire go bye-bye, and a new man is going to step on the scene, and many of you have probably heard of him, Alexander the Great. But before we get into Alexander the Great, what I want to do is tell you a few simple laid out reasons why the Persian Empire failed. Okay? So basically, Xerxes was defeated by the Greeks in the Persian Wars. Okay, so he was the king at the time of Persia, but he was a very cruel and weak king. And so really during his reign, the Persian Empire started to decline. And although it grew for more than a century, it grew weaker as it constantly faced conspiracies, assassinations, and revolts by the people who were burdened with heavy taxes. So that was one reason why the Persian Empire started to fall. And of course, the Persian Empire completely fell once Alexander the Great came onto the scene, which I'll get to in a few minutes. The social structure began to break down because there was no strong leader, so the lower class started riots against the rulers, and that did not help the Persian Empire. Weak rulers also led to numerous provincial revolts, especially in Egypt, which always had detested Persian rule. And so the emperors thus started to have total control rather than the kings of Persia, and the emperors are in Egypt. So that was another reason that led to their decline. And also, the taxes started to become heavier and more oppressive, which led to economic depression and revolts, which in turn led to more repression, heavier taxes, and so on. And obviously, that's not going to aid an empire to grow. And intellectually as well, the Persian people no longer received the resources to build and sculpt beautiful artwork in buildings. And that led to much less production of pieces of artwork. And when you have less things being made and less things that you can sell to make money on, that is obviously going to decline the empire as well. So those were some of the very simple reasons why the cats started to fall. Okay, so what I want to do quickly today in our lesson is talk about a couple of men that rose up from Macedonia. Okay, so Macedonia is in northern Greece. It is bordered on the west by Thrace. The north, obviously, is in northern Greece. And in the east, an area called Ilia. And I'm going to show you on the map here where we're talking about here with Macedonia. Okay, so you can see there. Whoops. This is so hard. Sorry. Okay, so there's Macedonia, and I hope you can see down there in the bottom Hellas, which is Greece. And here is, beside Macedonia, Thrace, and you can see on top of Macedonia is Iria. So that is the area we're talking about with Macedonia. Okay, so it's in northern Greece, and we're in the area of 359 BC, okay? 359 BC, and a king named Philip is ruling Macedonia. And Philip was a very wealthy man. He was a smart man, and over his reign, in his reign in Macedonia, he had acquired lots of wealth, and because of that, wealth kind of breeds wealth, and he wanted more. He wanted more wealth, which in that day of age meant more land. So, this man set his eyes on Greece. He thought, you know what? I think I want to get that land of Greece because it's a pretty nice land. So, basically, that's what he wanted to do. Now, why did he want to get Greece? What was his purpose on acquiring Greece? Well, essentially, 4 reasons that I've listed here. There was a history. He had a history with Greece. And number 1, he was held hostage there for several years. So, in Greece, before Greece started to become weakened, he was held hostage there for several years. So that actually, with a man as smart as he was, it helped him because he saw how Greece operated. He saw how strong they were and kind of what they did. So he got some insider kind of information during his time of hostage there. Number 2, Greece colonies had become a great obstacle to the Macedonian economy. And the strongest Greek power at the time, there's a city called Thebes, it continuously intervened in Macedonia politics. So Greece was involved heavily in Philip's life and in the country of Macedonia. And there was opportunity. Okay, so that goes back to last week that we were talking about when we looked at the Persian Wars and then the Peloponnesian War. All these wars, sure, Greece was still standing after them, but it had weakened Greece considerably. Greece was very, very weak. And so there was a big opportunity there for Philip to come in and conquer Greece, which he did. He had learned a lot in his time in hostage there, and then he had saw that it was just the right opportunity, kind of like the perfect storm. You hear that expression in this day of age, the perfect storm. All circumstances being favorable for something. And so that's what happened with Philip. And actually, he came into Greece and conquered it within a span of hours. Didn't take him very long at all to conquer Greece. And so Greece became ruled by Macedonia. Now, Philip was a pretty strong ruler, but unfortunately, he kind of met his match a little bit earlier than expected. And actually, I got to add more onto the conflict. What happened was Thebes and Athens united when there was this threat from Philip. And Athens had noticed Philip as well, okay, from a distance. They saw that this man was pretty strong, and they united, and they began to make plans to defend against the conquest of Philip. So they were working together, not like when we saw the Persian Wars, Athens and Spartan were working together. They never worked together again in the history of Greece. This was Athens and Thebes. And they battled at a place called Chaeronea. Okay, it's called Chaeronea. Chaeronea. That is where they had their battle. The battle didn't last long, as I said. Philip won, and Macedonia basically took property of Greece. Now back to what I was saying about Philip. He was a smart man, very strong, intellectual man, good military, but unfortunately his time kind of came to an end earlier than people thought, because what happened was in 336 BC, so his reign went from 359 BC to 336 BC. In 336 BC, Philip was assassinated. And we see that today still. Sometimes a strong leader fears people. People get afraid of him and they don't like him and things happen. So in this case, it was actually jealous noblemen at the time and Philip's actual wife that plotted the assassination. So they plotted it. He was stabbed to death, and Philip's reign was over. But that brings us to another man that was even more powerful than Philip. That brings us to Alexander the Great. Okay? Alexander the Great. Who here has heard of Alexander the Great? Raise your hand if you have. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Alexander the Great. Okay? Not many of you may know about Alexander the Great, but know everything about him, but I'm sure you've heard of him. So Alexander the Great was Philip's son. And when Philip died, Alexander the Great kind of took up his conquest and took up his plans as well. Because Philip was wealthy, as I said, and he got Greece, but he wasn't happy there. He wanted more than Greece, and so Alex was more than happy to continue that conquest, and which he did. Alexander the Great was named that way because he was great. He was very strong, and he was very precise in how he extended the empire. So onto the scene comes Alexander the Great. And Alexander the Great, I'm just going to give you a nutshell on him. He basically came on the scene right after Philip was assassinated. And his empire was tremendous. And I'll show you a map in a second of his empire. But I'm going to read you a little poem on Alexander the Great, which I think does a great job of summarizing what he did, because I want to keep this brief and to the point. So I'm going to read you this poem, show you a map, and then you can understand it a bit more. The best ever military commander was a young king named Alexander. From the Macedonia city-state, he was known as Alexander the Great. A brave man, he had a lot of bottle. A wise man, too. He was taught by Aristotle, so one of the great Greek philosophers that came out of Greece. He fought many battles and always won. His army never lost a single one. Turkey, Syria, Egypt, all fell. So did Babylon and Persia as well to Alexander the Great's empire. And I might also want to add in there, he got as far as northwest India as well. So Greece to Egypt to northwest India was all his empire eventually. But after 13 years of war, his men said they wanted to go home again. And that was the end of Conquest and Glory, and that's the end of Alexander's story. So, I hope you liked that little rhyme. And I thought that was a great rhyme. It summarizes Alexander to a nutshell. And that is what he did. He really extended the empire. Now, how come his empire ended right there? How come he didn't get further? Because actually he wanted to conquer all of Asia. That's what he wanted to eventually do. All of Asia he wanted to conquer. And his time came to an end a little sooner than expected as well, because he died at the age of 32. The young age of 32. And what did he die from? No, he wasn't assassinated like his father. He died from a deadly fever. So he acquired a deadly fever somewhere in his travels and his conquests. And that was the end of Alexander the Great. But I think it's safe to say he was a very strong man, and he conquered a lot in his short time. And I'm going to show you the extent of his empire on a map here, which hopefully I can do a good job of showing you. So there you go, the empire of Alexander the Great. So over here is Egypt by Arabia. So it even went into Egypt. And up here is Greece, Asia Minor here, which is modern day Turkey. And then all that pink down there, okay, all that pink down there was also his territory. So you can see how far he went and how great he extended that empire. And he actually, even up to this day of age now, his legacy was so great that he founded a city in Egypt named after him, Alexandria. And it's still there today. So his empire was great. And wow, who knows how far it would have went if he hadn't contacted that deadly fever. But he did, and the empire came to an end. And after that, there was really nobody else to take up that conquest. Alex didn't have a kid that would take up that conquest after him. But he took up his father's quest, extended it, and he really gained a lot of land and really had a pretty major, lengthy, extended empire geographically wise. So I hope that you got something out of this today. Basically, this will almost bring the Greek Empire to a complete end now, with Macedonia coming in and Alexander the Great. Now, it's not going to officially come to a complete end until we get into our history next week. And next week, we are going to go into a different area of the world. And next week, we are going to see the emergence of Rome as a major, powerful empire. And it was a major, powerful empire. And as I said last week, Persia actually had the most strongest empire historically in the world, even though Rome's empire will go over a greater amount of time, but Rome has a pretty strong empire as well. So we're going to get into that next week, and we walk into the land of Rome next week. So I hope that you join me once again, and I will try to make it interesting. And actually, I've been to Rome, so it's very interesting to me after I've been there to see some of it too. So next week, we get into the rise of Rome as a major world empire, the fourth one in the four major world empires to begin human civilization. And of course, we looked at Babylon, we looked at Greece, We looked at Medo-Persia, and now it is Rome as the fourth one. So, until next week, take care, and I hope you have had fun with history with Professor Banks. And please, I always encourage you, leave comments below my video. Let me know what you think. And next week, we will see you again. Take care.